Hello and welcome to Tech Raven. I'm Nigel and today I'm going to be covering 4 photographic poses that I absolutely positively cannot stand. It could be argued the last one isn't really a pose, it's more a photographic genre, but I'll cover that one last. But I'm going to go through these images one at a time. I've got 2 or 3 examples of each and I'm going to explain why I absolutely detest these photographic poses. So let me show you the first one. So this first one is what I call the armpit sniff, where a woman or a female model has got a bare armpit exposed and her nose and chin is pointing down in the direction of said armpit. So it looks like she's sniffing her own BO to see if she's clean or not. It's a terrible pose. Now, showing a woman's bare armpit is not necessarily the best of ideas when it comes to photography. Sometimes it can work, but generally I'd try and avoid it. But if you do have to have armpits up, have the woman's face pointing the other direction, or at least so her nose is not buried down in the armpit. Now, I've got to admit, I've got 1 or 2 photographic images on my own website, and I'm just going to show you a couple of examples now where the armpit is exposed, but these actually work. They're okay because, as you can see in this first image of this model, her nose and chin isn't pointing down towards the armpit. And same in this next image here. Her face and nose are not pointing down towards the armpit. So this kind of photographic image is fine. I'm just going to show you another one here. Now with this one, it is a little bit borderline, admittedly, but her nose and chin are not pointing down into her armpit. And let's be honest here, anybody viewing this image is going to be viewing the whole form, the entire body of the model, and not concentrating on that armpit anyway. So in that instance, it is okay. But do be aware not to get this horrible sort of armpit sniff thing going on. Here's another example. This Indian lady, her nose is well and truly buried into the armpit and it looks terrible. This is another bad example where the nose and chin are pointing down towards the armpit. And in this example, it looks like she is just positively sniffing her own BO. It's not a good look. It's not a good pose. So try to avoid that armpit sniff at all costs if you're a photographer. Okay, let me show you number 2 and why I can't stand this one. Okay, the second image is what I like to call the sort of the invisible toilet, the taking a dump, the taking a pee, the poo-poo shot, whatever you want to call it. This is where models squat down on their haunches and frankly, it looks like they're on the toilet. It's a terrible pose. Here's a couple more examples. This is just awful. It just doesn't look good. This one doesn't look good either. I mean, looking at this shot, honestly, she could be crouched down behind a car in an underground car park early on a Saturday morning after a long Friday night out and too much to drink. It's a terrible shot. And I've got to admit, now that I put that image in your mind, every time you see a shot like this, you're going to be thinking about that. So sorry about that. But it is a terrible shot. Here's another example. I mean, it's just awful. These sort of, poo-poo shots, not a good idea of a woman squatting down on her haunches like this. Just don't do it. It doesn't look good. It's not flattering, and it really does look like they're sitting on an invisible toilet or squatting down behind a car in that underground car park after too much to drink to take a pee. Not a good look, so don't do it. Okay, the next shot is this, what I like to call like a stomachache shot, or punched in the stomach, or stomach cramp, whatever you want to call that one. Again, this is an awful shot. Now, shots like this were popular in the 80s and 90s. They're all in vogue, and in fact, shots like this would appear in fashion magazines like Vogue, where the woman has basically sucked in her stomach, hands on hips, and pushed the shoulders and elbows forward into this, quite frankly, demented pose. It's nothing natural about it. It's the most hideous pose on the planet. It kind of reminds me of, those department stores. They'll get a delivery of plastic mannequins and they'll all be pulled out of the boxes and they'll just be stood up there and they will look like this. They will just be in these demented, weird poses until one of the shop assistants comes along and sticks a dress on it and bends it into something that could be, vaguely resembling a natural human pose. But this weird, contorted look is just absolutely demented and weird. And on top of that, as long as the woman has got her shoulders and elbows thrust forward and her stomach sucked in, it's, you know, that's going to affect the facial expression. There's no way a model is going to be able to smile, or as Bob Carlos Clark would say, you know, give me pissed off eyes, or have whatever facial expression the photographer is trying to direct. It's going to be hard while the model is holding this weird, contorted, demented pose. It's terrible. The worst pose on the planet. So again, I would never put any of these poses into my own work. So again, try and avoid this one, because I thought it had gone out of fashion. I thought it had died, but every now and then I will see this shot, this stomach ache, punched in the stomach shot, whatever you want to call it. Every now and then I see one and I just despair. I think, oh God. In fact, only a couple of weeks ago, I did a shoot in a studio, and the model, she was a friend of mine, admittedly, but she did strike this pose. And I said to her, I said, no, don't do that. It's the worst. And I explained why I had this hatred of this shot. Now, I only said that because she was a friend. Now, if she was a model, a professional model, that had struck up such a pose, A, I would be disappointed for the model coming up with the pose to start with, but B, I probably would have gone with it and said, yeah, that looks great, you know, keep that, and I would have taken a few shots just to keep the momentum going. But afterwards, those images, they would have been culled. They wouldn't see the light of day. It's a hideous shot, and it needs to be banished to room 101, if you ever remember that program, in Britain, that is. Okay, the final shot is, and again, this isn't necessarily a pose, it's more a genre of photography. It's baby bumps or pregnancy shots. They are terrible. I can't stand them, and here's why. Now, I can just about, at a pinch, understand the mother wanting a photograph like this for documentary purposes, so she can document how her body looked when she was long into her pregnancy. And, you know, I can kind of get that up to a point, but when that same woman has that printed out onto a great big canvas and hung in the hallway, so any visitors have got to look at it as they enter the house, it's like, yuck, why? Or worse still, putting it around the internet, all over social media for everybody to see. It's like terrible. For me, it's like the second lowest form of voyeurism after only people watching. I can't understand why any woman would want a baby bump shot on display for everybody to see. Now, several years ago, I lived in a town, and I never forget this one summer. It seemed to be, I don't know if it was all the rage at the time, but I saw 2 or 3 young girls, late teens, early 20s, that were seriously pregnant, a good way into their pregnancy. And they were wearing these kind of crop tops, or whatever you'd call them, so their belly and pregnant stomach was exposed for everybody in the town to see. It's the lowest form of voyeurism, again, only after people watching, and I can't see why any woman would want to do that or have pictures like this displayed all around the world for everybody to see. I don't get it. It's a personal thing maybe on this one, but I can't stand baby bump photography or pregnancy photography. Absolutely hate it. So these are 3 poses and 1 genre of photography, shall we say, that I can't stand. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you have any images that you can't stand, or any poses that you would never do in your photography? Okay, hope you found this video somewhat entertaining. It's a bit light-hearted, admittedly. So you've been watching Tech Raven. I'm Nigel. Until the next one, bye for now.